Welcome everyone to another Think Onward webinar series event. Today, we are joined by the projects team and we are hosted by Nate. Nate is our head of innovation at Think Onward. And
we want to talk with you all about kind of how the project team goes about kind of building out some of the different work that we put out on Think Onward, kind of how they think about framing, how they think about engaging with our community, how they engage with sponsors, how they think about technology. And so by the end of this, we hope that you have some good insights about kind of how we operate, and that if you are interested in working with Think Onward on one of our projects, you kind of have this kind of some background about what to expect. And also, we look forward to answering a lot of your questions about kind of the nuts and bolts or philosophy about projects. So just before we get going, maybe just a bit of definitions. So what is a project? Well, a project is what you see on our main page. So if you've been on Think Onward, we have a long list of projects that we've accomplished over the last couple of years. The idea behind this is that we bring a sponsor comes to us with a usually a subsurface problem, but they can be data science problems also. And they say, I need help with this. I need someone who is an expert in this. I need someone who has the skills necessary to accomplish this, because we don't have it internally inside of our team, or we're just running out of time. We need help. So we put that project out here on Think Onward for any our community to apply to, and they go through an interviewing process, and we pick one, and then that starts out as a full project. We'll talk about that in a bit more. But from there, the data, the tooling, the technology, the project management is all being taken care of by us, allowing the worker to really just focus on the subsurface problem and answer that. And this was created because our parent company, Shell, really needed sort of more brains to solve problems, and needed more diversity of brains to solve problems. And so far, this is proving out to be a very useful experiment, and is continued going now for about 5 years. So I might have, or actually maybe a question to the panel first. So this one's to Thomas. So, I mentioned subsurface data science. What are the other types of projects that we host on Think Onward, Thomas?
Yeah, so we have exploration projects, everything from prospect to regional scale, as well as some development projects where we focus on innovation, such as denoising seismic, and POC projects as well. So ML tooling, and the types of projects that we have also range from single worker to small teams, whether it's having just a single XIR, or like a host of different background XIRs to forge together as one team.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so yeah, really flexible in terms of, yeah, if there's a problem, yeah, we can move to try to solve it with our community. So talking about our community, you might hear us use the term XIR, which stands for Expert in Residence. This is just kind of our fun name for our community members that have the deep expertise in a workflow, in a basin, in both. And they can be anywhere, any phase of their career. And Tracy, one of the things that we really like to highlight when we talk to sponsors is just the diversity. So when you think about who's in the community, where are they coming from? What's the short list of countries that we're pulling from?
No, there's no short list. It's a long list. You've got that map behind you. They're from everywhere. There's many in the U.S., as you might imagine. There's extending North America to Canada. We've got even going south. We call someone from Bonaire, Brazil, Colombia. We going over to Europe, all over Europe, UK, Norway, Netherlands, Italy, Spain, Portugal, Germany. You have a list in front of me. Egypt, Nigeria, India, Australia, Malaysia, Indonesia, and more.
Yeah.
No short list.
Yeah. So as you can imagine, that creates some maybe late night calls for this team, but they have great coffee setups at home. And then the last thing to just kind of define is our virtual machine. I mentioned that before, that the data, the tooling is all there on this virtual machine that we can then deploy to wherever the contractor is working. So yeah, then I guess question like Mike, like what kind of like what's on that virtual machine right now? Like what are our toolkits that we have?
Lots of things. So we're running the virtual machine as a PC system, and as such, we of course have all the core PC programs on there, like an Office piece of software, screen capture software, PDF readers, and all that sort of stuff. On a data science and geoscience side, we work a lot with software like Petrel, ArcGIS, QGIS. We've worked in the past with OpenDetect, Move, Paleoscan, Kingdom. There's really no limit, to be quite honest. That's really the important part here. If there's a software that runs on a PC, it can run in the PC environment in the virtual machine. And so, whatever the project needs, we're trying to put on that virtual machine if we need it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a really slick sort of solution that we've built here, because when you get assigned to a project, you can just whatever machine you have, you just virtual right into it, and so you have all that space ready for you available. So very cool. So as we start this panel, maybe just kind of something fun to think about. For those of you that aren't aware, if you kind of scroll through the different projects that are active or have run in the past, they all have some beautiful mineral names and pictures of minerals. This is just so we can kind of keep track of things. But because we've done so many projects, some of our mineral names are getting a little bit, that we're getting down into kind of tier 3 sort of minerals. So maybe Tracy, do you have like a mineral name that has been your least favorite to pronounce? Because we're constantly saying these mineral names.
Well, I thought you were going to ask what was my least favorite, and I was going to say what the ones that I can't pronounce, like that one. That's Project TPS. That's what I call it.
TPS, yeah, that's fine.
The one with the Z above. I can't pronounce that one either. So we had these code names for backgrounds. We may come up with them, or the client, the sponsor, may choose to select one. We like to give them the opportunity. Sometimes they're very creative with and have fun names.
Cool. Mike, do you have one that is your favorite to pronounce, or your least favorite to pronounce?
So my favorite would be, we did a geothermal project and the project name was Vulcanite. So I think that was very appropriate. I really like that. As Tracy said, there's a few that I cannot pronounce that we use 3-letter acronyms for. The good thing with mineral names is, though, that there's like over 5,000, right? So we have a lot of running room for mineral names. I guess we could have named them all for animals or cars or whatever. But since, or a lot of us are geoscientists, mineral names seem to be appropriate.
Yeah. And then Thomas, I always feel a little bit embarrassed as a geologist. I feel like, oh, we should really have easier names. You're coming out from a very different background from everyone else. So do you have as you're introduced to the world of subsurface, do you have a favorite mineral name that you've seen so far?
Favorite one, I I think I've actually been intrigued by the hard to pronounce one. So ZVY we call Zavi, but it's Zavia ginsavite, and so I practice my pronunciation as the non-geologist here. But as far as least favorite minerals, I've actually been kind of unimpressed with the gold and silver as of late, because it's so easy to mix up the two, and
really interesting.
Yeah, it's almost too boring that I almost forget about it.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Well, hopefully this is winning you lots of trivia nights around town. Now that you've been exposed to all these mineral names. So kind of changing tack to more serious tone here, and talking more about kind of how projects are run and everything. I guess maybe first question off to Tracy, in like what are some of the key kind of processes or methodologies projects has implemented to kind of really improve kind of the way we do things, but also just making our client happy. So can you say,
Sure. Yeah, I would say the short answer would be from my perspective would be automating data syncs between the client and
Yeah.
the XIR. A significant part of every project is data management, as you might understand. So making sure that data gets transferred efficiently and securely from the client to that secure virtual environment, as well as those work products from the XAR back to the client in a fashion that, like I said, is secure and efficient is critical to success of the project.
Mm.
Um, I mean, where possible, where possible, and in most cases, we have been able to implement an automatic data sync, and so that has been a game changer for us, for the client, and for the XAR. The client, it's easy for them, and then the XAR, if they have intermediate work products, as they tend to do, they can kick those over pretty seamlessly. But also, when there's new data coming in, they're not fumbling like they might have been in the past to say, where do I find that data and uh, yeah, that kind of thing. So I think that's really it's been a great changer and for everyone
Mm.
is automation is always a good thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And especially when you think about, some of these projects are, hundreds of gigabytes of data that we have to be moving back and
Exactly.
forth between teams. Like it's been a huge advantage. Um, cool. Mike, Thomas, anything else like from your perspectives about kind of like methods or processes that have really kind of changed the way we've operated in projects?
I would second what Tracy said. I think
Yeah.
the data sync, because the data management is such a big part, right? And there could be such large amounts of data that go back and forth. It's not just that you have to set up the project at the beginning, right? And you have to push the data into the virtual machine. There's like data flowing back and forth, right? Additional data that's needed that you didn't know at the beginning.
Sure.
Interim products that need to go back and to have that data sync available, and for the XIR not to worry about does this make it back to the client or vice versa. That's really huge, right? So
Yeah. And yeah, again, that's something that our XIRs they don't see that they get to make requests, but they don't have to do the lugging around of bits, bytes. Cool. So maybe Mike, continue the spotlight on you, sir. One of the things that you've been really strong on when we've talked about projects over the last couple of years is just kind of project scope and deliverables, and so how have we sort of improved or changed the way we've been defining project and scope and deliverables so that way, everyone looks good, right? The XIR looks good, us as a service are able to deliver and the sponsor is happy. So how are we kind of changing that project scoping sort of setup?
yeah, so Nate, for us, that part which we call framing, right? Defining the scope, defining the deliverables, that part is probably the most important one in the project life cycle. It's at the start of the project, and quite frankly, if you screw it up, right, you can have the best XIR to work on the project and best communication, but you're not achieving your goals because your goals aren't achievable in the worst case scenario, right? That might be because the project runtime is too short for what you want to do in a scope, or some of the deliverables aren't achievable because you don't have the right software, you don't have the right skill sets, right? So that's where it all starts. Just to give you an idea of how we have done this traditionally, is a client would come to us, they would want to do a project, we would discuss scope with them, scope and deliverables, we would align on that. That coming out of that discussion is a job description, basically. What skills do we need from the XIR? And then we would post it, applications would come in, and we would screen. That is fairly sequential, right? You talk to your client first, you do the job description, then you talk to the XIR. What we've started, and is the evolving piece. What we have started now for a few projects is that we're trying to bring in the XIR while we're still in the framing session.
Yeah.
So that person can basically inform the client and be informed about how this project should be structured and what's achievable. Now, that does not work for all projects, right? If a client comes in and already has everything, a project for us that they basically had on a shelf for a while but never get around to do it, then everything's already mostly set, and that's fine. We obviously vet that, and we're thinking through with the client. Yep, that sounds achievable. We all have either geoscience or data science backgrounds, and we have other folks in the company who are experts in things like geothermal, CCUS, data processing, geophysics. They can come in and vet that scope with us, and then we're set, and then we go to the XIR. But a lot of times, a client comes to us and says, "Hey, I really want to do this project, but I'm not quite sure how to set it up, or what would be a good scope for it, or how should we break it apart in different phases, whatever it is, right?"
Yeah.
And when we come in at that stage and we know enough that we know, okay, we need that type of skill set for the XIR, we can already search for somebody, can bring someone in, and then do the framing with us. So it's kind of a loop thing, right? It's kind of an iterative thing almost, better than the sequential one.
Right.
So in that sense, that's how we do it. Go ahead.
I like that because some of the reasons why we're being asked to do work for a client is they're stuck. They need something different, and so if we're being very prescriptive about something, it's like, oh, you have to do A, B, C, D in your order, in this order, because that's how we always do it. You're just going to be coming up with the same process. But our XIRs have some really clever approaches about how they attack things. And that actually can be the real insight. It's like, well, we can actually just cut this out and just go directly to step B, right?
Yeah.
So
absolutely. One more thing on that, and maybe even more important than figuring out the scope and the deliverables to us, is the framing is here to build the trust, right? We meet the client potentially for the first time. We a lot of times meet the XIR for the first time. Sometimes they're repeat XIRs. They come back for another project. But we do meet a lot of people for the first time, and it's tough in a remote environment to build that trust, right? But in that framing, what goes along with the technical work is really understanding where everybody's coming from and making sure that the client is comfortable with us and with the XIR, and the other way around, of course, as well, that the XIR fully understands what the client is doing, how we manage the project, and trusts us that we do that in an efficient way, in a sensible way. So that to me, honestly, is on a basic level the most important thing, right? But all the technical thing goes along with it.
Maybe kind of continuing down that kind of the next part in that process then is kind of like onboarding. So Thomas, you've been helping out XIRs, kind of bringing them into the system and everything. How are we operating right now so that way we can kind of bring in a new worker, a new XIR kind of quickly and make sure that they are set up for success?
Yeah, so we do our best to ensure all logistical aspects, those are handled as painlessly as possible, but also well before the project kickoff. And this is just allow the XRs to focus on the technical work. And throughout the start of that project, we're also providing support, providing reference materials, whether that's for the virtual machine or the software, but also access to dedicated communication channels. That's with us as well as with the sponsors. And then we also monitor the project so that we can just be there whenever the XRs need help.
It's downtime. Downtime is no fun especially when you could be interpreting rocks, right? It's like, okay, gotta keep things more efficient. So, and then kind of maybe again continuing the flow here, as the project is running, and this is a question for you, Tracy. As the project is running, how are we, making sure that the XIR is really there to shine and helping them sort of be valued and that their expertise is being utilized. How do we kind of monitor that and keep that moving?
Yeah, I think this you guys may have touched on this a little bit a couple questions ago. You mentioned how we don't prescribe typically, with the framing, how things are done, that rather we provide a level of autonomy. And I personally feel like if I am trusted, for my expertise, my experience, then you will give me some autonomy to figure out how to do my work. And so I would say at foremost, up front, we give autonomy to sort out how to do the work. We asked for a work plan early on. How will you, to understand that approach and make sure, it kind of fits the timeline that we have. But we bring, Mike used the word trust with the clients. It's trust with the XARs. We want to show that we have trust in them, we hire smart folks, right? Like these are vetted folks, they're smart, and we have trust in them from our end, but they have a reputation to uphold. So first, that you're building that solid foundation, but also we provide plenty of support and guidance, right? We don't just like throw them out to the wolves and like, here you go. I mean, we endeavor to provide a very positive and constructive work environment. We have regular check-ins where they get constructive feedback from us, from the client, so they can kind of assess how they're doing, if they need some redirection. We also advocate for the XAR, so that they know they're not out there, in a silo or on their own. And we have science backgrounds. We all know that remote work can be challenging, so we try to put ourselves in the client or the XIR shoes. And then lastly, we appreciate the work that they do and coming in and working in this manner. And so where possible, we provide bonuses for exceptional work. So to really put a final bow on it, like that's like you delivered on time, above and beyond, we're going to give you a bonus.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, yeah. As you're talking, I'm remembering sort of past projects that have happened that were examples of everything that Tracy, Mike, and Thomas are talking about today. But we're a bit stuck because a lot of the things that we work on are confidential. So I can't really speak out the basin or the prospect that people are working on, where some of these examples or some of these learnings are from. I think if you go through some of our projects, you can see sometimes we're able to talk about the geographic region that we're working in or the basin. Yeah, so I wish we had more specific examples for you here, but it's confidential. So and then some of these projects are I guess they can be difficult on both ends, right? Some projects are like a month long, some are 6 months long. And when you think about communicating, like not only to the XR, but communicating back to the sponsor about like, oh, we learned all this cool stuff. How do we transfer that? How do we communicate that back to our sponsor so that way they're able to pick things up and use them right away in their business? That's a trick also. And Mike, you've done some thinking about kind of how do we communicate some of these complex ideas right now and make sure that the sponsor is being brought along as the XIR is thinking about kind of what they're developing?
Yeah, and that's a good question, because you're absolutely right. Some of those projects are either long, so it's hard to keep all the scope, in your head basically, or they're just frankly so complex or in an area where my background doesn't help anymore, or doesn't help that much, right?
Yeah.
And that could also happen to the XIR on the client side, right? To keep track of all of this. What I like to do, and other people might do different things, but what I like to do is I like to break things down in its components and then try to build it back up. And I try to do that visually usually. So we have tools like a Miro board, or literally just a PowerPoint visual that helps me understand how this project is set up, what are the different parts, what are the different things like deadlines, key data sets, crucial scope items, and then put it back together. And I'll try to usually weave a story around it so that I can communicate it rather than just handing someone, here's your project. I would be like, this is what we want to do first for A, B, and C reasons, right? And then the next thing builds on that. So that way you contextualize the technical work, and I think it's much, much easier to digest than if you just have a list of deliverables, for instance, right? So that's number one. The second thing is you want to be honest. If you don't understand something, or if you think some things can't be done or are not without a scope, let's discuss that early on, because chances are they will come back in the middle of the project when you can't act anymore, and that then it's too late. So be honest. Every stakeholder should be honest. We can discuss everything and make adjustments if we need to. Another key thing is don't assume. Even if you do projects with folks that have done projects with us, or projects that we've done in the past where the scope is similar, don't assume that everything works the same way.
Hmm.
Be prepared that some things might not work as planned, and so if they don't, have a plan B or confirm that everybody understands what happens. Um, but the bottom line for me is that you want to communicate often. You want to communicate
Yeah,
probably more often than you think you should.
sure.
I haven't been yelled at yet, telling me that you're writing a lot of Slack notes or a lot of emails. I'd rather do a confirmation saying, "Hey, we're meeting tomorrow," or "Are you guys okay with how that project is going?" One too often, than just assuming that it doesn't work. Just assuming that everybody understands what's
Yeah.
going on. So those are my key points, at least. I'm sure other people have other ones too.
The more we communicate, the more we can find problems. And at the end of the day, we want a happy client because then they are happy with Think Onward, and then Think Onward is happy with our community, and we can give more and more projects out as we expand. And certainly, I think when I was kind of looking at the count this year of number of projects, I think we're on track to have one of our better years in terms of just numbers out there of projects out to the community. So anyway, things are moving this year. Maybe so if you have questions or something, we just got a couple more questions, and we'll be moving to your thoughts, folks on the line. So type those in if you're interested. Um, Maybe there's some folks that are probably on the call that would like to be an XIR, or they're thinking about applying or something. Maybe Thomas, do you have any insights for those folks about kind of like what would be something that kind of would really help them, get a project or run a project effectively?
Yeah, I would say to really come curious and excited about the work you're about to do, because I think that's a surefire way to ask a lot of questions. And that's how questions can come up organically. Like if you're really passionate about,
Yeah.
some data that you're seeing or a certain area, those things will come out organically. And I think it's critical to seek clarity and be proactive in setting that foundation for the project. And that really, sets you up for success. And so sometimes we can have, different expectations for when we start that project, whether
Mm,
that's like data organization or access, project deliverables. And it's just seeing eye to eye with us as the project monitors or the
mhm.
sponsors and what they're expecting. And so, yeah, just getting all those questions asked clearly and early in the project, I think that gets the project running smoothly and allows our XRs to effectively deliver.
Yeah, great, cool, cool, cool. Um, and then just kind of final question is to all of you here. It's something I'm obsessed with right now, so I have to ask it. But how are we kind of staying ahead of kind of emerging technologies, and like what are we doing on the project side to kind of really kind of ramp up and make sure that as different AI tools, machine learning tools are coming out, what are we doing to keep pace with all that? So maybe kind of open to the panelists about kind of where you see steps we're taking to make it kind of join that race.
Start. Um, I stay plugged into industry organizations. All of them seem to have like AAPG, SBE, PMI, to name a few. They seem to have a technical committee, subcommittee that's focused on data science and technology, even AI specifically, and make sure that I'm following those. I'm not just following, but I'm involved. I actively volunteer as well. Um, Keeping up on papers, reading as they're released to the degree that you can. I know there's a lot out there, but just following on social media, staying involved with the industry, and actually engaging as well, like with those
Yeah.
industry groups. Specifically, but also leaning heavily on my amazing Think Onward colleagues like yourself, Nate, who kind of help get me up the curve when I
Mhm.
don't have the time or the capacity to pick up the next tool and tinker with it that you may have already tinkered with it,
Yeah.
and you can share your experience. I think it's really good to just go to folks who know it and get learn from them, right?
Right. Cool. Yeah. Good
Yeah,
one.
just
Yeah. Yeah.
jumping off on that, I think I've learned a ton just from being at this company, from the folks here at Think Onward. Just
Mhm.
like Clark, even an example as a AI expert and in opening the possibilities of how we can utilize it for our project management and just like it's like things we don't even think about. It exists and it's out there and just need to tap into it.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, and I'll plug. Yeah, yesterday Clark did a webinar about kind of Gen AI and kind of utilizing that in your day to day. That will be up on ThinkOnwards on our Learn section, including this talk. So yeah, if you want to get kind of an insight about how we're using Gen AI, yeah, go check out Clark's talk. It should be up here probably within another day or so. So check that out. Mike,
if I can add something here, yeah, if I can add something here too. So we have an internal Slack channel, right, for things like new Gen AI tools, for instance. I personally struggle with keeping up. There's multiple messages every day. It's like, check this tool out. Hey, maybe we should look at this. It's just, you know, clicking on it and looking at the website is sometimes daunting because there's so much stuff coming in, and it's also sometimes those websites don't tell you much, right? It's all fluff to me, sometimes at least. Or I don't have the right background to evaluate it. What we started doing is reaching out to some of our former XIRs and getting their advice, because they're in the wild, so to speak, right? They go to conferences more than I could. They teach, so they get feedback from folks, what they're struggling with, what they're exciting about, what's the new great tool that could be a game changer. And so we really welcome, not just from those guys that we're engaged with so far, but from everyone who has been an XIR or wants an XIR to, you know, let us know, hey, guys should check out this tool for, you know, whatever project that may be. It will really help us, and it's really the best way to see what the community is excited about.
For those online, if you have any questions, kind of open it up now to anything that's on top of your mind. So just go ahead and just pop it into the Q&A section. We have one question up first. This is a good one. Do you find any unique challenges for staffing projects that require single XIRs versus multiple XIRs? So yeah, it's a good one.
It's a
What do
very
you
good
think about that,
question.
Drew? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very good question, and there are challenges because when you have a project that has multiple folks, they need to be able to work together well, right, remotely. And so you need to find the skill sets that complement each other from a technical standpoint, but also personalities that would work together. You know, folks that can you know, you don't want all leaders or cooks in the kitchen either. You might need one that's a leader versus others that are, you know, doers as well, doers and I wouldn't say followers, but you know, that just can work in that style. Some folks just want to work independently. Some folks aren't, you know, I wouldn't say they're not team players, but they prefer to do independent work. You know, and also we think about it sometimes like we'll think about we're looking for someone who is a prospector. This one's the interpreter. This one's the dreamer, you know, like these kind of like archetypes. And so we might kind of try to have that mix of folks. That could be the mix of skills. That just some flavors there. And I hope I didn't steal some thunder from others that wanted to say something. So please add to that, Mike and Thomas. But that was my 2 cents.
No, that's yeah, you're absolutely spot on. I mean, in terms of challenges, one thing you have to worry about when you have multiple folks is where they're all located, and does it match with a client time zone, right? If you have somebody in
Great point.
Southeast Asia and one in somebody in Europe and then somebody in the Americas, that is a really tough time zone overlap because there is no overlap, to be quite honest, right? So sometimes that actually requires us to have that location criteria as a potential screening criteria, right? Because otherwise we wouldn't be able to run the project. Was anything from your side?
Yeah, that's basically it. I'd say those three factors are probably the primary ones that make it complex from a single to a multi-XIR. Just balancing those and figuring out, you know, how to really narrow down when we have so many qualified candidates from our community.
One more thing to mention here is also that usually when we have projects that have more than two folks, more than two XIRs working it, we designate somebody as a team coordinator, not a team lead, because the technical work is flat across the folks that are working on, but as a team coordinator who makes sure that everybody shows up to meetings, that the data gets put, the work products get put in the right folders. Because if you have 4 people or more even running in a virtual machine, it just by default gets messy. Not that anybody does it on purpose, but that's just how these things work, right? But honestly, it's a lot more work, those multiple XIR projects, but it's kind of a lot more fun too, because you see the XIRs interact with each other. They're learning from each other because everybody comes in with a different background.
Yeah.
It's really cool. It's really cool.
So another question just popped up that's kind of related to this. So, remote work is well suited for these kinds of projects. Agreed. Has there been any pushback from sponsors, as many of them are going back to the office, or most of them are back in the office? So do people want to see their XIRs in person?
There are use cases, I would say, where a particular scope of work, they want it to be done on site, and largely our projects have been implemented virtually, right? We've talked about the virtual machine or remotely, and we've talked about the virtual machine. There have been cases where the team, if they were local, would come in periodically or ad hoc, really. But I wouldn't say there's pushback. I think that clients that come to us recognize the benefit of crowdsourcing a global community, and that if they want the best of the best, they're looking for a unicorn, and that unicorn isn't local, then that they're missing out if they expect it to be local. They're limiting their pool of talent. So it hasn't, I wouldn't say there's been pushback. There's some particular cases where it's not so remote, but it's largely remote. So and yeah, this is perfect work for remote style. And we can show, like, if you have an internet connection and can be on this call and do a video call, you can access a virtual machine. It's not much required there.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, and
No, that's a good point. Sorry if I could just add to this, because Tracy mentioned, like, the setup, for instance. As an XIR, you really don't have to have much capability on your home office, right? The one thing we usually recommend is, if you have, use 2 screens, because some of the work you just need the real estate. But other than that, because it's run as a virtual machine, you're not using any of your computer performance. So we've not yet had a project where we said, sorry, we can't run this on your computer at home. So.
Sometimes we have kind of the polar opposite of going back to the office. Well, the XR you want, well, they're hiking through the Blue Mountains of Australia right now, so you have to wait, or you have to take some time, because there's a number of our community members that are semi-retired and just looking for some rocks on the side. So cool.
Nate, that's another good point that maybe is worth saying a couple more words to this. We are very flexible with our projects, right? I mean, projects do have deadlines, right? They should get done at a certain point for various reasons. But if we run a project that's 3 months or so, and you already have scheduled a 1-week vacation in there, we'll work with you, right? You take that week off and then come back and work again. Or if you want to take Monday and Tuesday off and work Saturday and Sunday instead, no biggie for us, as long as we agree on the milestones and when project work needs to get done.
We're approaching the end of our time here. Take a moment just to thank you, Mike, Thomas, and Tracy, for your time. Thank you for running projects also and making it such a success to date. The team is here. You can always jump onto thinkonward.com and engage with us and chat with us. And if you have further questions about projects or other things, we're happy to discuss via email or maybe a short call.